Welcome to the Inspire Gym podcast with me, your host, Shadrach Mutala. I'm so excited to have you on this platform where we dive in the world of business, entrepreneurship, leadership, and motivation. On this premiere episode, we are going to be talking about innovation versus cost effectiveness. And to help me do that is my colleague, Mr. Jivas Matsoka. Mr. Jivas, it's a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Flower. It's my pleasure to be on this podcast. As you mentioned earlier, I heard you mentioning something about innovation and cost effectiveness. I would want you to explain to our viewers what you really mean when you say innovation.
Thank you, Jivas. I think it's a very, very important topic, specifically for entrepreneurs and startup companies, because if you're looking at our country, Zimbabwe, you realize there's a lot of unemployment rate, and that is forcing a lot of young people to get into starting companies, providing their own services and stuff. And I feel it's a very, very important topic, because when you want to start a company, you don't want to add to the competition. You want to eliminate the competition. To go back to your question about what is innovation, innovation is basically introducing something new to the market, whether it's a product or it's a service.
Okay. I heard you saying innovation is very important.
Yes.
Can you explain to our viewers how important is innovation in business?
I think the best way that I can answer your question, Jivas, I think when we were growing up, we used to have these phones like Siemens, like Nokia and BlackBerry back then in the 2000s. And I think one would imagine that, basically, I think in the next 20 years, they're going to remain the top, mobile phone industries. But what happened in the end is that those companies, they just disappeared on the market. And the reason is they failed to innovate. Today we now have iPhone, we now have Samsung, and these are now in Huawei. These are now the top mobile phone industries. So I think innovation is very important, because when you are in business, remember that every business that you get into, there's probably some form of competition. So whatever you are doing, you have to keep that in mind, that you have to innovate, because the world is constantly moving forward. At some point, we used to use, those VCRs, those big, tapes and stuff. But nowadays, we no longer even use the discs, the DVDs. We're now using USBs. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we used to use things like, those, SD cards. You get what I'm saying? Memory cards. But now the mobile industry innovated, and now they're producing phones with a high memory, high storage. So it is very, very important that whenever you are doing business, you have to innovate. You have to go an extra mile, because things are constantly moving forward. So as a startup company, it's very important that when you want to enter into a certain industry, you have to look around and see what is being done in that industry. How can I enter in that industry and become a game changer? And I feel that is a very important thing, because I've been involved in the formation of more than 100 companies. And the most number one mistake that a lot of young people make is to think that they can do something better, but by not really changing or looking at their model, specifically their product. You get what I'm saying? Because right now, if you say today that you want to introduce your own bakery, you want to sell bread, because right now, as we're speaking, right now we already have three main brands. We have Bakers Inn, we've got Proton, we have got Lobels.
Yeah.
So the question that your customers are going to ask you when you introduce your own new brand of bread is, what's different about your bread? You get what I'm saying? Because we already have quality bread like Bakers Inn, Proton, and Lobels. What is different about your bread? If you can't answer that question by your product, then you're going to have a problem as a startup company, because those three giants are going to force you out of business. You get what I'm saying? But if you introduce your own bakery and you're producing your own brand, but there's some form of twist on your bread. Maybe you're using organic things, there's a different taste to it and stuff like that. You're now giving your customers a choice, an option. They say, you know what, my product is different from this. It's not really a direct competition. Though we are in the same industry, but I'm introducing something that is a bit different. So sometimes when we talk about innovation, people think about maybe you want to introduce something that is totally new. It's very difficult to do that. But sometimes you just have to add a twist on your product or on your service. So I think it's a very important thing, specifically for entrepreneurs, specifically for young people who want to get in business. Because I want to tell you the truth, most of startup companies, they don't go anywhere far.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been involved in registering, writing business models for a lot of companies and stuff. It's very painful that you see a young person today who is so excited about an idea, but after 3 months, that company no longer exists because they try to go against those giants who are already giants in the industry, and they really couldn't make it.
Okay. I get you, Mr. So, using my general knowledge,
Yes.
I think there is no way we can talk of innovation without talking of the cost.
Exactly, that's very true.
So, before you mentioned about cost effectiveness, so I think it's going on that direction.
Exactly.
So, can you explain to the viewers what do we mean by cost effectiveness?
No, I think that's a very, very important question. But before I can answer that question, because basically when you're starting a company, you obviously start with a limited budget because you don't want to start a company, overspending, then trying to regain that amount of money later on. Again, what I'm saying, because most of the people that start a company, they start a company in two ways. It's either you're going to get a debt or you're going to do equity financing. You're going to sell your shares to some people who want to invest in your company. So basically, it is very important for you to spend your money wisely. That is where cost effectiveness comes into play, because cost effectiveness is basically having the best value for your money. So wherever you're going to be putting your money, whatever you're going to be incurring, whatever expenses that you're going to be incurring, you have to incur them in a wise way and get the best value for your money. Because Jeeves, the number one question that a lot of people do is because specifically if you are into, maybe you're the inventor of that product, people are so much into say, I want to create something that is perfect.
Okay.
By so doing, sometimes they come with an extra cost. Then after putting all your costs into, everything that you want to do, you've done your total calculations and stuff like that. For you then to put a markup on that cost and say, this is the price of my product, you realize that, your customers are not willing to pay the same price. So it is very important that in a way of innovation, you're also cost effective.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much for explaining that to our viewers. I would want you to explain to us how best can we measure cost effectiveness.
Yeah, I think before I can do that, I think it's also important for me to really shape this to our viewers, because some people can say you're talking about cost effectiveness a lot. How do we exactly arrive at the cost of a product? I think it's a very, very important thing. Specifically, if you're in a business of manufacturing a product, it's very important for you to understand how do you arrive at the cost of a product. Basically, there are two ways that you can arrive at the cost of a product. We are talking about your fixed cost. These are costs that remain constant over a fixed, or even if your level of production increases, they remain fixed. We are talking about things like rental. You get what I'm saying? They remain fixed over a certain period of level of production. You get what I'm saying? So basically, those costs are like, for example, you can talk about things like your Wi-Fi cost. You get what I'm saying? Basically, maybe if you have a certain Wi-Fi cost that you have for a startup company, your rentals and stuff like that, these are costs that remain fixed even if you increase your level of production. Then we have got what we call variable costs. These are costs that increase if your level of production also increase. You get what I'm saying? So these two costs are what we use when we're calculating our total cost per unit. So you're simply saying your fixed cost per unit, the cost that we said, they remain fixed even if your level of production increase, and your variable cost, the one that vary with the level of production. So if you say your fixed cost per unit plus your variable cost per unit, you arrive at your total cost per unit. Okay. So that's a way we can look at that. If you are an entrepreneur that is into producing and manufacturing something, because that's where you're really involved in the level of production, if something increases and stuff like that. But if you're an entrepreneur that is, maybe you are purchasing your product from South Africa, basically now you have got a new way of looking at your total cost, because you're looking at your total purchase price, and you're also looking at things like license fees, like the railage the carriage the cost of bringing that product to to the place of use, again what I'm saying, like to your factory and stuff like that. So it's also very important, because the reason why I wanted to mention this is because most people make an error in calculating their costs, and in a way that end up also affecting their profits as well, because you cannot talk about being cost effectiveness if you don't know what costs you need to consider when you're doing a business. So basically we looked at two ways here. We spoke about the issue of if you're an entrepreneur that is into manufacturing, you have to understand your fixed cost per unit. And you also have to understand your variable cost per unit. And also understand that these costs should be directly attributable. There should be a direct link with this, to the product that you're producing. It's not any cost. You get what I'm saying? Because sometimes people end up putting other costs that they've incurred for their own personal business. So it is very important for you to look at those costs. So when you want to be cost effectiveness, you are looking at your fixed cost per unit, your variable cost per unit. If you are an entrepreneur that is into manufacturing your product, inventing your product, but if you're an entrepreneur that is into importing, maybe you want to import something outside of the country, then resell it in Zimbabwe, then you're now looking at your purchase consideration, your purchase price, plus also the license fees, the import charges that are also directly connected to the product that you want to sell. So it's very important because sometimes, we simply say, I'm buying this product for $10 and I'm selling it for $15. So my profit is $5. But that's wrong because there's also a cost of bringing that product to your company. That carriage inwards, that railage inwards, that air freight charge, you're not putting that into consideration. You get what I'm saying? That also needs to be part and parcel of that cost for you to be able to calculate, your profits. So I wanted to make that clear on how we can arrive at the total cost per unit. Okay. So basically, we are simply saying, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to understand your fixed cost per unit and your variable cost per unit for you to understand the total cost per unit. And if you are an entrepreneur that is buying, outside of the country, you have to understand how you can add up your cost for you to get to the total cost per product. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And the total cost per product has to include things like the range, the cost, the transport fees, the license fees, the patent fees that are tied to that product. Is very important for you to look at. Then to come to your question about cost effectiveness, I think it is very important because once you know your costs, you have to do whatever it takes to manage your costs. Again, what I'm saying. I think there are two methods that can be used to calculate, to measure cost effectiveness. One of the methods that you can use is the cost effective analysis. Basically, there you're looking at the cost versus the benefit. You get what I'm saying? Because sometimes I think it's very important that in business you don't just consider one option. You have to consider a number of options. Whether you want to do your marketing, you have to consider different options on how you can provide that service or how you can provide that product. You don't have to be an entrepreneur that just consider one product. And this is a common mistake that a lot of people do. So you have to have at least 3 options so that you can be able to use this formula that we're talking about, the cost-effective analysis. And that will help you to give you the project or the service or the expense that you have to incur. You get what I'm saying? Where exactly you have to put your money, where exactly you're going to get the best value of your money. So basically the cost-effective analysis is looking at the cost and the benefit. So you're simply saying the cost divided by the benefit, and you get your cost per benefit. So the one that you have to consider is the one that gives you the least cost with the highest benefit. You get what I'm saying? And I'm sure we are going to be putting these formulas in our description so that it helps you understand, because you don't have to be an entrepreneur that just do things without planning. Because remember, number one reason why a lot of startup companies, they don't go far is because they don't manage their costs. So it's very important for you to be able to manage your costs. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's what we do, specifically if you're talking about the cost effective analysis. So we simply said the one project that gives you the least cost with the highest benefit is the one that you have to take, is the one that is more viable. You get what I'm saying? Another method that you can use, the cost utility analysis. Here we are not talking about the cost and benefits. We are talking about the adjusted useful life years. You get what I'm saying? We call them quality adjusted life years. You get what I'm saying? Basically, I can give you an example of a phone. You get what I'm saying? So let's say you're an entrepreneur or you're a manufacturer of a phone, and you are simply saying, if I'm to put battery A, it's going to cost me $2, but it's also going to give my users a 10-year expected useful life. You get what I'm saying? If I am to invest maybe $5, is going to give my users maybe 12 years. You get what I'm saying? So by doing the calculation, you simply have to understand which one gives you the more quality, the quality adjusted life years. You get what I'm saying? So the second method of calculating cost effectiveness is what we call the cost utility analysis. So here we are not looking at the cost and benefits. We are looking at what we call the quality adjusted life years. So one example that you can use, for example, let's say you've got a tire puncher. If you go to the repair guys, they're going to tell you that if you put a plug, maybe that is going to give you a useful period of maybe 1 month. But if you put a hot page, it's going to give you maybe 3 months. So you now have to look at the quality adjusted life years of your product. So it's another way of looking at cost effectiveness, that if I'm to invest in this project, it's going to give me this amount of years. If I'm to invest in project B, it's going to give me this amount of years. So basically those are the two methods that we can use to calculate cost effectiveness: the cost utility analysis and the cost effective analysis. Those are the two methods that we can use to calculate cost effective analysis.
Okay, so Mr. Flower, just to do a recap, you said cost effectiveness, there are two types, that is the cost effectiveness analysis and the cost utility analysis. So the cost effective analysis, is this the one that you said is comparing the cost and the benefits?
Exactly.
What about the cost utility analysis?
I think when we're talking about the cost utility analysis, we're now looking at the usefulness, the adjusted usefulness of a product. We're not just looking at the cost and benefit. We're simply looking at what that project does in terms of your customers, in terms of the users of the project. You get what I'm saying? It's a very common method that is used in health industry, that if you are to do a certain operation and a person is going to give that person maybe 2 years, if you're going to do a certain operation, is going to give that person 10 years, and then the patient has to choose which one exactly is the most viable. So basically the one that give you the least cost and the highest quality is what we call the quality adjusted life years, is the one that you have to consider.
Okay, thank you very much on that, Mr. Flower. So maybe the other point that I would want to know, me and the viewers, is how do we balance between cost effectiveness and innovation?
I think we cannot look at, I think the best way that I can answer that question is we cannot talk about that if we don't talk about the total economic value of a product. I think it's very important to look at the product itself, because whatever that you want to do, whether it's a product or a service, whatever you want to do is targeted to your users. You get what I'm saying? So like we said, when we started this podcast, we said it is very important for you to innovate. But at the end of the day, you also have to be cost effective. You get what I'm saying? So there should be a balance between those two, innovation and cost effectiveness. And one way to look at it is to look at the value of a product. And there are two types of value that you can find on a product. There is what we call intrinsic value. This is the primary function of a product. This is the primary function of a service. You get what I'm saying? So basically, if you buy a phone today, the main value that you want to find on a phone, the main function of the phone, it has to call. You have to send messages. Again, that's the primary function. Okay. So if you're an entrepreneur that is into maybe manufacturing a product, it is also very important for you to know the intrinsic value of your product. You get what I'm saying? That is the reason why most of the time when you go to the market, you can find a product that looks very nice, but it has a less intrinsic value. The product maybe, I remember at a certain point, my brother bought some, those USB from China. They were really looking nice as a pharmacist, so they were looking like a pill. You get what I'm saying? But he started selling those things. After maybe 1 week, the customer would come back and say, your product looks nice. But after two weeks or a week or two, it starts to malfunction. So it is very important that if you are an entrepreneur who is into manufacturing, you have to also to understand the intrinsic value of your product. You get what I'm saying? Then we have what we call the intrinsic value. This is the value that is derived by external forces. You're talking about your branding, your marketing. You get what I'm saying? So it's also very important that if you are into producing, you also have to create a very good brand for your product. You get what I'm saying? The reason why I'm mentioning these two types of value is because if you are in a business, let's say there's a competitive price, you have to now use the cost reduction techniques. You get what I'm saying? And know exactly where you have to reduce the cost. You get what I'm saying? Because we can talk about, say, let's say you've got a target cost of $20, but where exactly are you going to reduce the cost? That's a very, very important question. That's why you have to go back to the issue of value and say, you know what, do I have to sacrifice the intrinsic value of this product, or do I have to sacrifice the intrinsic value of this product? So that's why it's very important, specifically if you're using cost reduction techniques. So it's very also important that if you are an entrepreneur who is maybe selling or producing a basic commodity, and a basic commodity have got a downward sloping demand curve. So which means that your customers are very sensitive to price. You get what I'm saying? And so you're entering a market whereby there's a competitive price. You're also entering a market whereby your customers are very sensitive to the price. So it's very, very important for you to understand that you have to use cost reduction technique. In as much as innovation is important, you also need to know how do you reduce your costs. And the best way to do that is to look at the intrinsic value of your product and intrinsic value of your product. And then you need to do that analysis and see where exactly do I have to sacrifice. And that's the reason why most of the time, if you've noticed that the products that don't really look nice, but they really last long on the market. Even if you look at cars, Toyota have got one of the best brands in terms of their cars being durable cars, that can last you. But most of the cars that you really find, they're not really that nice compared to, other brands of cars, because they focus more on the true functionality of a car. A car needs to be efficient. A car needs to be durable. It has to last for 10 years without, you going to the mechanic, every time. You get what I'm saying? So I think it's a very important way to us to look at that issue of cost effectiveness and innovation, specifically if we look at the issue of the total economic value of a product.
Okay, Mr. Clark, maybe just hold you there. I met someone, a young guy, who started a business on freezer making.
Exactly.
So how would you advise him, especially when it comes to intrinsic and extrinsic value?
I think looking at that kind of a product, about if someone is selling a freeze it, again what I'm saying, I think you look at that product and you have to understand that if you look at the other substitutes of a freeze it, you're not looking at someone can just go and buy a cold beverage. Again what I'm saying. So the advice that I can give to that person is to focus more on the intrinsic value, because if you look at a freeze, it's basically a colored water. Again what I'm saying. So a customer is going to ask themselves a question. Maybe if you say your freeze is going for 10 cents and they can buy maybe a fizzy drink for 30 cents. Again what I'm saying. If you look at the difference in terms of taste, in terms of quality, it's huge. You get what I'm saying? So which means that your customer will end up going for a fizzy drink instead of buying a freeze it. No matter the branding that you're going to put on your product, you get what I'm saying? The brand that you're going to put, the intrinsic value that you're going to put on your product, people are not going to really care. You say, this is a freeze it. You get what I'm saying? So it's a product that doesn't have a lot of value in terms of people's eyes. But if you were to say, you know what, my freeze it is made up of 100% organic, fruits. You get what I'm saying? It's simply something that I put in a blender, in a blender, and I'm just giving you something that is organic, whether it's an orange, whether it's something. Now you're not looking at the intrinsic value. You're not looking at that product and say, you know what, this is not just a general freeze. This is something that is extra, value into it. Again, what I'm saying. Because another issue that you also have to look at, if someone wants to get in the business, you have got a very huge competition, because there are not really a lot of barriers barriers to entry in that industry. So my advice to someone who wants to get in the freeze it making business is you have to look at specifically your product, the function of your product. You have to look if you can add a little bit of something. That's the reason why you found out there is a brand called Kombucha, which is really doing well, because they didn't really copy anyone. They just look and say, you know what, our product is good and it does A, B, C, D, and people started to focus on that product because of its uniqueness. So you can't just get in a freeze and making business and say, I just want to copy what the next person is going to be doing. No, it really doesn't work well, because you might be forced to say, you know what, I have to reduce the price for me to sell more quantity, and it doesn't really work well at the end of the day. So my advice is, if you want to get in such a business, look at the intrinsic value. Focus more on increasing the true function of your product.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. Earlier on, I heard you mentioning something to do with saying the basic product.
Exactly.
Yeah. So can you explain to us what are basic products?
No, I think basic products are the products. I think the basic way that I can say about basic products is they're readily available. Again, what I'm saying. So if you get in a shop, if you are going to get in the next shop and find this exact same product, that's what we call a basic product in terms of availability. You get what I'm saying? This is something that is readily available when you get in a shop. You get what I'm saying? Then I think there are different type of products. There are what we call luxury products. You get what I'm saying? That are a bit different. That you have to find a specific product. Maybe if you go to Borodale, you can't find it in a certain industry area. You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? So that's the difference. That's the opposite of having a basic product. You get what I'm saying? There are products that are found in certain locations. Then there are products that are readily available in almost all environments. You get what I'm saying? Which means there are no barriers to entry in terms of, associated with those products. You get what I'm saying? So if you're an entrepreneur who is in, producing or selling that kind of product, then you have to look at cost effectiveness very well, because you have to be able to manage your costs, because you'll be dealing with a competitive price in the market. You get what I'm saying? I'm sure you noticed that when this issue of runners came into play, you realize that even the price of clothing went down because there were so many people. If you get in town, there are so many malls and stuff like that. So you can't continue to be selling your product at a higher price, because that is going to drive away your customers. So you have to reduce your product. It's just the price of your product to match the competitive price. So I think that is the best way that I can say a basic product is something that is readily available, something that you can find anywhere in the market.
Okay. Or maybe can you just do a wrap-up for us?
I think one thing that I also want to mention is that there are also different types of products, what we call vibrant goods or luxurious goods. Okay. These have got an upward sloping demand curve, which means these are types of goods that are customers that want to be seen associated with. It's like a Rolex watch. You want to be seen wearing a Rolex watch. You want to be seen driving a Bentley. You want to be seen driving a Rolls Royce. You get what I'm saying? So these kind of products, let's say you're an entrepreneur that is dealing in this kind of product that are luxurious. I don't think you really have to mind a lot in terms of being cost effectiveness, because your target market, you're talking about people that are millionaires who are simply saying, if you can produce something of value, I'm willing to pay for that product. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. Because as long that product is not found readily, seen with anyone else, you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Then I think it's more valuable. You get what I'm saying? They look at value in terms of how how less demanded it is. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that's another way you can look at in terms of innovation and cost effectiveness, like the type of product that you're dealing with. Again, what I'm saying. So if you are into luxurious goods, then it means that you don't really have to worry about being cost effective, because the product that you're producing is for certain individuals that are able to afford it. Again, what I'm saying. And that also means that the more you increase in value, the more that individual, that target customer will be willing to pay to match that price. Again, what I'm saying. For example, let's say Bentley introduces and say, we are going to introduce a car that is going to do A, B, C, D, and we're just going to introduce 5 of those cars. You get what I'm saying? That means that there are billionaires out there in Saudi Arabia, all of these countries that are targeting those 5 cars. You get what I'm saying? So that means the producers are not really worried about managing their costs. They're just looking and say, if we can produce something of value, there is someone who is also going to be willing to match that price. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So basically, it is very important for you to identify the kind of product that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a basic product, then you have to keep that balance between innovation and cost effectiveness. If you're dealing with a luxurious product, then I think you have to focus more on innovation. You have to put more strength on innovation more than on cost effectiveness, because if you are trying to be cost effective, you might end up limiting value. You get what I'm saying? Because your target market is willing to pay whatever value of your product, as long as bring them comfort, as long it's, you get what I'm saying? Because obviously it's a luxurious product. You get what I'm saying? So I think that's the best way that I can, summarize, innovation and cost effectiveness.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mplawa.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And I hope our viewers have understood the importance between innovation and cost effectiveness.